The story begins with our main hero, Kenji, a high school student, and 11 hours earlier he finds himself in what seems like the luckiest moment of his life when a girl suddenly approaches him and reveals that she has liked him for a long time and wants to go out with him. Kenji instantly grabs her hand and agrees, while inside his heart he can barely contain his excitement. After all, 17 years of staying single, and now he finally has a girlfriend. Sounds perfect, right? Well, not for long. Suddenly another girl calls out from behind and questions whether all the affection he showed her was a lie, and before he can even process that, yet another girl appears and reminds him of the passionate confession he once made to her. At this point, Kenji is completely panicked and desperately tries to suggest that maybe everyone can somehow get along, but the girls are not having it. One thinks he is joking, another calls him worthless, and the third admits she had been genuinely happy. Then, in a scene that escalates way too quickly, all three girls pull out knives and accuse him of playing with their hearts. Kenji frantically tries to calm things down and suggests talking it out, but the girls make it clear that there is nothing left to discuss. And just when things are about to get really bad, he suddenly realizes something. It is all a dream. He wakes up in a panic and wonders if he is still unable to let go of the past. Unfortunately for him, his teacher immediately notices and comments that obsessing over such things is unhealthy, and that he should probably share his story in the counselor's room instead. The entire class bursts into laughter, making the situation even more embarrassing. Later, after school ends, Kenji walks home with his friends and admits that he has been having a rough time recently. One friend jokes that it takes real courage to fall asleep during Kitagawa's Japanese class, while another points out that she tried waking him up, but he looked like someone who had not slept all night. Then another friend jokingly suggests that perhaps he spent the night watching dirty videos. Kenji immediately denies it and insists that there is absolutely no way he would ever watch something like that. According to him, he was simply doing research. His defense falls apart almost instantly when one of his friends reminds him about the suspicious magazines he keeps hidden. Kenji freezes and wonders how she knows about that, only to learn that his friends discovered one of his old hiding spots during a previous visit. Yeah, that secret did not survive very long. The teasing continues when a friend points out that Kenji has a popular younger sister and suggests asking her to introduce him to some of her friends, while another proposes inviting someone out to a family restaurant. Kenji immediately shuts the conversation down and insists that it is none of their business, claiming that he will confess to someone himself once he gains enough confidence. His friend comments that he always becomes strangely serious whenever these topics come up. Trying to change the subject, Kenji complains that he has already spent almost all of his monthly allowance, only for his friend to be horrified after discovering that he has just 13 yen left despite half the month still remaining. According to him, even an elementary school student saves money better than that. Kenji sighs and explains that although it is the weekend, going out is completely out of the question. He apologizes and says he has important things to take care of over the next 2 days before finally saying goodbye and heading home. His friends tell him they will see him on Monday, though one of them cannot resist making one last sarcastic comment about making sure his younger sister discovers all of his hiding spots. Kenji immediately tells him to mind his own business. Now alone, he walks home thinking about how unbelievable it is that he got caught and realizing there is no fixing that embarrassment. He also feels like he is not in the right state of mind to confess to anyone, and while walking he concludes that having a real girlfriend feels like nothing more than a dream. But then he gathers his resolve and decides that today everything will change. Today he will settle things once and for all. Today he will finally enjoy his school life properly. And most importantly, today he will summon a demon and fulfill his wish. Unfortunately, he says this so loudly that nearby people hear every word. The moment he realizes what he has done, he is overwhelmed with embarrassment. Like seriously, who casually announces their demon summoning plans in public? Trying to recover, he begins reciting the title of the demon he intends to summon. Gremory, the great demon who commands 26 legions as a duchess of the demon world. A noble lady known for her camel mount and the treasure crown hanging from her waist. Kenji believes her abilities perfectly match what he needs, though he worries about whether he can successfully negotiate with someone so noble without completely falling apart under pressure. Still, he knows there is no other choice. He has to succeed no matter what. After arriving home, he reminds himself that he must somehow settle matters connected to his past self and finally experience a proper romantic relationship. That was always the goal, but so far everything has ended in failure. He closes his book and sadly concludes that perhaps the method was perfect, and he is simply the one who is not good enough for it. Then, without warning, a girl's voice suddenly speaks up and identifies itself as Gremory, the great demon and duchess of the demon world. Kenji is stunned. She is actually real. However, his shock quickly turns into confusion because her appearance is completely different from the way legends describe her. Gremory casually explains that even demons have their own circumstances. Before the conversation can continue, Kenji's younger sister, Saya, calls from outside after hearing a girl's voice. Instantly panicking, Kenji realizes she is awake and angrily blames Gremory for the situation while Gremory simply acknowledges it. Dropping to the floor, Kenji desperately begs the noble duchess to cooperate because things will become incredibly awkward if Saya sees her. Gremory points out how quickly his attitude changed, but agrees to help and tells him to hurry up. Kenji opens the door and claims he was watching a movie and adjusting the television volume, suggesting that Saya must have heard the sound from that. Saya is completely unconvinced and reminds him that just because their parents are away does not mean he can stay awake until 3 in the morning. Kenji immediately apologizes, but Saya explains that since they do not have school tomorrow and she is already awake, she wants to watch a movie with him and asks what genre he is watching. Completely cornered, Kenji blurts out that it is an adult movie. Saya instantly responds that this is exactly why he does not have a girlfriend. Oof, oof, direct hit. Kenji begs her not to attack him like that, but she notices that he is only sticking his head out through the doorway and wonders whether he is deliberately preventing her from entering. She even suspects that he has not cleaned his room. Sweating nervously, Kenji finally claims that he is watching dirty videos and has not even put on his pants yet, making it impossible for her to come inside. Saya immediately calls him disgusting and runs away in embarrassment. The moment she leaves, Kenji lets out a huge sigh of relief and realizes that somehow that ridiculous lie actually worked. Gremory comments that it might be the worst bluff she has ever witnessed. Kenji apologizes for making her wait, but Gremory calmly explains that it does not matter, because this may be his final farewell with his younger sister in this world. Then she raises her enormous claws toward him, and warns that stepping outside the protective magic circle before signing a contract is basically the same as asking to be killed. Kenji agrees and admits that he can no longer do the things he once accomplished in his previous life. Curious, Gremory asks whether he remembers that life, and Kenji reveals that memories from 2 years ago suddenly return to him. Gremory then wonders whether summoning her is connected to those memories, and Kenji confirms that it is. Gremory jokingly admits that she expected him to ask for some private or erotic wish instead, then sits on the bed and asks about his past out of pure curiosity. Finally, Kenji reveals the truth. In his previous life, he was a famous figure in a world of swords and magic, and everyone knew him as the Great Sage. Gremory gives him a skeptical look, which Kenji completely understands. He admits that it sounds impossible to believe, but insists he is telling the truth. He died in an accident, yet there were things he regretted, and that is why he wants to return to that world. Gremory naturally asks why someone as powerful as him cannot simply return on his own. Kenji explains that it is impossible in his current weakened state. The problem is not his body or appearance, but a fatal leak in his magic power. He has spent countless efforts trying to recreate an ancient summoning ritual that survived into this world. At last, Gremory understands why he summoned her. Kenji confirms that he believed a great demon associated with knowledge might be capable of helping him. Gremory then asks whether magic exists in that other world as well, and Kenji explains that almost everyone possesses magic there whether they actively use it or not, because the density of magical energy in that world's atmosphere is vastly different from this one. Gremory falls silent for a moment and thinks carefully. Then a smile appears on her face. Now she is interested. And just like that, she offers Kenji a special contract. Kenji immediately tells Gremory not to pity him because otherwise he might actually start crying. Curious, Gremory asks what exactly caused his death in his previous life, and Kenji reveals that he was stabbed by a girl during a certain incident. Gremory admits that such an ending sounds incredibly traumatic, and then wonders why he is so desperate to check on those people from his former world. Still, she decides that the reason does not really matter. Using her authority over the universe, she begins searching for the coordinates of that other world and announces that she will create a ritual capable of opening a gateway and transferring him there. Hearing this, Kenji stares in amazement as he witnesses what appears to be a vast repository overflowing with boundless knowledge. So this is the power of the universe itself. Moments later, Gremory announces that the search is complete and suggests opening the portal immediately before heading over. However, Kenji instantly panics and tells her to stop. If they open a portal inside the house, there is a good chance his home will not survive the experience. Surely opening a gateway between worlds in the middle of a bedroom is a terrible idea, right? He quickly suggests moving somewhere secluded, perhaps a nearby hill. Gremory comments that he certainly has a lot of requests, but agrees. Kenji then says he will quickly put on his shoes, and while heading for the door he hopes that this time Saya does not discover that he is sneaking out. Unfortunately, the moment he closes the door behind him, he finds Saya standing there. His heart nearly stops. Startled, he asks how long she has been standing there, and Saya apologetically admits that because he has always kept secrets from her, she only pretended to return to her room and instead stayed behind listening to everything. Kenji immediately starts trying to come up with excuses, but Saya cuts him off and tells him to stop hiding the truth. Then, with tears in her eyes, she asks whether he is really her older brother anymore, or someone completely different who possesses memories from another life. Kenji quickly explains that he has not forgotten any of the memories he made as Kenji, but there is a reason he needs to go back, and he begs Saya to let him leave. Saya quietly asks whether he truly wants to see those people again. And then, before anyone can react, she suddenly drives a knife straight into Kenji's stomach. Blood immediately pours from his mouth. Gremory watches in complete shock, trying to process what just happened. Then Saya coldly calls out and orders Gremory to stop hiding and come outside. Gremory emerges and asks whether they are really siblings because she can no longer understand what is happening. Saya then declares that because her brother is preparing to abandon her, she alone will be the girl who stays by his side, just as she did in their former lives. Kenji freezes in disbelief as Saya reveals an unbelievable truth. Ever since she was born, she has also possessed all of her memories from her previous life. Then she reveals her real identity. She explains that she was actually Saki, the fox spirit from his former world, the very traitor who killed him in that life. Of all twists, who could have seen that coming? Saki continues and reveals that after killing him, she took her own life as well because she had no attachment to that world without him. However, before dying, she carefully prepared everything so that their reincarnations would work in advance, ensuring that both of them would be reborn in the same world. For the last 17 years, she has been happy keeping him close, but now he is trying to leave her behind again. Holding the knife toward Gremory, Saki declares that none of this would have happened if Gremory had not appeared before her brother. Gremory calmly replies that this is completely misplaced resentment and asks whether Saki truly believes an ordinary human can threaten a demon like her. Saki simply repeats the word human before suddenly changing forms. In an instant, she transforms into a demon-like being. Both Kenji and Gremory stare in shock. Saki then explains that the reason she chose this world for reincarnation is because it is her birthplace. Unlike Gremory, who can barely move between worlds without a contract, Saki can function normally here even in a world where magic is scarce. Then she opens the door and orders them to follow her. As she walks outside, she remarks that the house is far too cramped for what is about to happen. But despite that, it contains many precious memories, and for that reason she does not want to destroy it. Gremory follows her outside, while Kenji remains collapsed on the ground. Struggling to stay conscious, he desperately tells them that there is no reason for the two of them to fight. But before he can finish speaking, another mouthful of blood spills from his lips, and he collapses onto the ground. The situation has spiraled completely out of control, and now Kenji is caught right in the middle of it. Kenji sees Saki declare that he should wait for her, because once she turns Gremory into nothing more than a scrap, she will die alongside him, and this time they will spend eternity together in their next life. With that, she flies out through the window, and Gremory immediately becomes irritated, wondering if Saki is really turning her back on an opponent before a fight. Gremory angrily realizes that she is being underestimated far too much. She rushes forward to catch Saki, but somehow fails to reach her. Saki calmly explains that it is not underestimation at all, it is simply confidence. And just like that, both demons rise into the sky. Suddenly, a massive barrier forms around them. Gremory is surprised and questions what it is, while Saki explains that she created it because she does not want to destroy the place that holds so many precious memories for her. Inside this barrier, however, they can fight with everything they have. She even points out that her beloved older brother is currently dying, so there is no reason to hold back. The moment she finishes speaking, she launches countless fireballs toward Gremory. Gremory skillfully dodges every attack and destroys them one after before declaring that she will now demonstrate the true power of a Duchess of the Demon World. Meanwhile, Kenji lies on the ground, struggling to breathe. As blood continues to flow, he wonders whether dying like this would somehow allow him to reincarnate in his original world. But then he immediately rejects the thought. No, that makes no sense. He has to find a way to stop this. If only could gather even a little magic power. Looking up through the window, he sees the barrier in the sky where the two demons are fighting. Saki relentlessly bombards Gremory with fireballs, while Gremory continuously cuts through them and evades every attack. Saki even laughs and claims that all of Gremory's efforts are useless. She creates another barrier, only for Gremory to shatter it with a single strike. After absorbing a considerable amount of magical energy from the battle, Gremory confidently announces that she is now ready to take Saki's head. In response, Saki forms an enormous sphere of fire in the sky and prepares a devastating attack, insisting that just because Gremory managed to pressure her slightly does not mean the fight is over. However, At the exact moment both attacks are about to collide, someone suddenly appears between them. It is Kenji. To the shock of both demons, he blocks both attacks with his bare fingers. Gremory cannot believe what she is seeing. Her strongest attack has just been stopped by 2 fingers. Saki is equally stunned because Kenji has somehow managed to use magic in this world. Kenji calmly explains that he absorbed and recycled the magical energy both of them scattered during their battle. Then he reminds them that although the Great Sage is only a title from his former life, it was never just for show. Saki stares in disbelief as the fatal wound in Kenji's stomach completely heals. Gremory immediately recognizes what she is witnessing. Healing injuries, strengthening the body, and forcefully entering another person's barrier are feats that only an exceptionally talented spellcaster could perform. She openly acknowledges his incredible skill. Then she points toward the Yandere fox spirit who has betrayed him twice and points out that Saki is no longer in any position to win. Saki herself admits that she could never defeat the Great Sage once he is capable of using magic. Seeing her finally lower her guard, Kenji gently asks if they can talk for a minute. Then he asks Gremory if she can step back for 2 minutes. Gremory agrees without hesitation. After all, she already understands the situation. Deep down, she even starts wondering whether she is about to witness some kind of emotional reconciliation scene. Honestly, even for a demon, this is getting surprisingly dramatic. As the tension settles, Saki looks at Kenji and becomes overwhelmed with emotion. The two stand face to face, and Kenji gently turns her face toward him. Saki nervously wonders whether he is about to scold her. Instead, Kenji suddenly pulls her into a hug and apologizes. He admits that he is the one who pushed her to this point. Even during the moments when he was fading in and out of consciousness, he kept seeing her face. Looking back now, he realizes how foolish he was. He never understood that she had been chasing after him all this time, and he spent more time worrying about how others treated her than understanding her feelings. Saki tearfully points out that she never expected him to make a contract with a demon just to return to another world. Kenji admits that he really did plan to go back to the person he once was. But things are different now. He is Kenji. More importantly, he is her older brother. Hearing those words, Saki completely breaks down. Through tears, she admits that she was scared. More and more talented people kept appearing around him, and she became terrified that she would eventually be ignored and left behind. Deep inside, she always knew that jealousy, hatred, and her inferiority complex were what destroyed everything he had built. Yet despite all of that, he is still calling her his little sister. Kenji gently tells her that everything that happened was also a result of his own actions. At that moment, both of them notice Gremory opening an enormous magical gate nearby. Gremory reminds Kenji that regardless of what has happened, he already signed a contract with her and cannot back out now. He is going to be transferred to that other world. She also notes that if that world truly contains an overwhelming amount of magic, then it would practically be paradise for demons. Kenji asks whether she is planning to invade that world or something similar, but Gremory immediately dismisses the idea as reckless. Then, without warning, the scene shifts entirely to the other world. There, several demon girls are discussing an incredible discovery. They have finally found the world where their beloved master was reincarnated. Excitement spreads among them as they realize that they may finally be able to meet him again. One of them points out that because he reincarnated, his appearance will probably be completely different now. Another instantly dismisses that concern. His appearance does not matter. His strength does not matter either. In fact, she admits that she would be delighted even if he had become weaker. Why? Because if that happens, she plans to drag him away, claim him for herself, and personally welcome him into her own version of hell. Yeah, something tells us Kenji's problems are only just beginning. Now Gremory suddenly looks up in shock and notices monsters attacking from the other world. She immediately wonders what those creatures even are, while Kenji stares at them and silently hopes they are not what he thinks they are. Even Saya is left stunned. Then Gremory realizes that these are monsters from the other world, and strangely enough, they resemble weaklings. But the moment she prepares to attack, one of the flying monsters instantly locks onto her and detects hostile reactions from local life forms before engaging its mission. And just like that, a laser beam fires from the creature. Gremory barely manages to dodge in time, yet her magic staff melts completely. Wait, what kind of attack melts a magical weapon that easily? Even Gremory cannot believe what just happened. Saya immediately tells Gremory to defeat them quickly before they discover something important, while Kenji remains equally shocked by the situation. Gremory responds that if Saya wants results so badly, she should help too. However, Saya explains that she is busy maintaining the barrier because if it disappears, the neighbors will see everything. Then she turns toward Kenji and asks if he can do something. Kenji reasons that since the creatures attacked immediately, they will probably leave after observing this world. For now, he simply tries to seize control and send them back. Unfortunately, when he waves his hand, only a puff of smoke appears. Yeah, Not exactly the legendary Great Sage performance everyone was expecting. Kenji awkwardly admits that he thought he still had power, but apparently his magic reserves are gone. Even so, he reassures Saya that they will somehow manage. Then another magical gate suddenly opens in the sky. Kenji notices it immediately and explains that Gremory originally intended to close the portal and sever the connection to the other world. Smiling slightly, he realizes that running out the clock is probably the best way to buy time. Meanwhile, Gremory continues dodging magical attacks and explains that these creatures possess extremely high magical density. Because this world contains so little magic, their bodies cannot maintain themselves for long. And sure enough, the creatures from the other world begin collapsing and disintegrating on their own. Finally catching her breath, Gremory admits that they were far stronger than she expected. If even scouts are this dangerous, then what else exists in that world? Naturally, she now wants much more information from her summoner. After returning to Kenji, Gremory asks him to explain the other world before they reopen the gate. However, Kenji calmly says there is no need to go there anymore because his objective has already been fulfilled. Gremory immediately rejects that idea. According to her, simply opening the gate released enough magic for her to gain tremendous power. So what would happen if they actually entered that world and claimed its power for themselves? Kenji argues that such a thing is impossible. Gremory laughs and agrees for a second, but then suddenly becomes annoyed and asks whether he is underestimating her. Kenji tells her to focus on the creatures they just fought. Gremory admits that aside from their appearance, they were intelligent and coordinated. They were probably monsters scouting dimensional rifts or perhaps high-level demons. Still, she confidently claims that in the demon world she could defeat them instantly. That is when Kenji drops another bombshell. He reveals that those creatures were merely familiars, low-ranking ones used only for reconnaissance. Gremory freezes. Seriously, can this world get any scarier? Kenji reminds her that he already explained how the magical density of the world called Tulia is completely off the charts. Because magic is so abundant there. Demons are everywhere, including exceptional individuals capable of destroying entire cities with ease. Even the humans living there are vastly stronger than anyone would expect. Their technology remains stuck around a medieval level because they rely almost entirely on magic. Then Kenji points out something important. If Gremory is fascinated by Tulia because of its magical density, then wouldn't the inhabitants of that world naturally be stronger than her as well? For the first time, Gremory falls completely silent. Slowly, she drops to the ground and repeats the name Tulia, a world of swords and magic. She admits that she never imagined she would encounter an opportunity connected to something so enormous. Kenji smiles and reminds her that he will still give her his soul when he dies naturally, so the contract can be fulfilled. Gremory immediately snaps back and says that he had better keep that promise. Meanwhile, Saya suddenly realizes what that means and becomes alarmed after hearing that her brother's soul is part of the deal. Without hesitation, she pulls out a knife and tells Gremory to die, calling her a thief. Kenji immediately restrains Saya while she struggles and insists that she will kill Gremory. He explains that attacking her physically is completely useless because she is not a normal physical entity. Besides, a contract is a contract. Gremory remains quiet for a moment before finally saying that if Kenji intends to honor the agreement, then that is enough for her. She is exhausted anyway and plans to return home. Kenji apologizes and promises that he will properly explain everything to Saya. Gremory accepts and tells him that she will meet him again once his lifespan ends, at which point she will come to collect him. She then attempts to disappear into the air. However, Kenji suddenly calls out to her. Saya impatiently asks why she has not left yet. Gremory pauses and admits that she has no idea what is happening. Then everyone realizes something unbelievable. Gremory is trapped in this world and can no longer return to the demon realm. Saya explains through tears that under normal circumstances she could easily dissolve a temporary body with magic and return home. Suddenly, she notices something strange about Gremory's body. Gremory asks whether she discovered anything, and Saya realizes that the body has become completely incarnated. Kenji theorizes that this happened because Gremory absorbed all the magic pouring through the gate. When Gremory asks what that means, Kenji explains that instead of merely possessing a temporary physical form, she has become bound by the laws of this world. Saya immediately understands the implications. Just like her, Gremory can now use only a small amount of magic and must essentially live as a human. The moment Saya processes that information, she bursts into laughter. Then she picks up the knife lying nearby and casually asks if she can borrow it for a moment. Holding it against her own neck, she wonders whether killing herself would return everything to normal and send her back home. Before she can do anything reckless, Kenji immediately stops Gremory and tells her not to rush because she might actually die. Then, as he pulls her back, something completely unexpected happens. Kenji, Saya, and Gremory all stare in shock as Gremory's clothes suddenly tear apart and the knife falls from her hands. Gremory instantly panics and tells everyone not to look. Saya immediately volunteers to fetch some spare clothes and orders Kenji not to stare at her. Of all the possible outcomes, why does it always become awkward at the worst moment? Afterward, Saya asks why Gremory's clothes disappeared. Kenji explains that the demon summoning ritual used in this world is unique, because the world's magical density is extremely low. The ritual was specifically designed to support demon activities. More importantly, the magic used to fulfill contracts can be sourced directly from the demon world. According to Kenji, the entire system contains numerous loopholes that favor demons. In fact, he is almost certain that the magical formula was originally created and spread by demons themselves. Saya finally understands. Since the contract with Kenji has already been completed, the magical support maintaining Gremory's form has disappeared. As a result, Gremory no longer possesses enough magic to maintain her outfit. Hearing this, Gremory becomes even more embarrassed. A little later, Saya asks Kenji whether he can form another contract with Gremory. Kenji thinks about it carefully and admits that depending on the contract terms, Gremory might regain her magic. However, he has already resolved the issues connected to his past life and no longer wants to involve himself with magic or demons. Saya apologetically tells him that such a choice may no longer be possible. Kenji looks confused, and then Saya reveals the reason. The people from the other world have already discovered where he reincarnated. She believes the familiar that appeared earlier was investigating and searching for traces of him. Kenji becomes emotional and wonders if they would not simply be disappointed by how different he is now and leave. Saya shakes her head and explains that not everyone was fascinated by his appearance or strength. Even now, she still loves him deeply. For a moment, Kenji is left speechless. Then he gently says that she is probably worrying too much. Turning toward Gremory, Kenji asks whether she would consider making another contract once she calms down. Unfortunately, Gremory is currently collapsed on the floor and completely overwhelmed. Kenji sighs and concludes that she probably will not be doing much for a while. Saya agrees and says they should leave her alone for the moment because she actually feels a little sorry for her. Kenji finally agrees and decides that everyone should get some rest. Later, Saya calls out to her big brother. Now that her previous life has been completely exposed, she nervously asks him what he really thinks about her. Then she shyly wonders whether they can sleep in the same room for just one night. Kenji gently places a hand on her head. Saya looks up at him hopefully, but then Kenji simply asks whether there is a spare futon in her room because he plans to borrow their father's room for the night. Instantly, it feels as though Saya's entire world shatters into pieces. Kenji casually says goodnight and walks away, completely oblivious. Meanwhile, Gremory remains lying on the floor. Saya slowly approaches her and asks whether the two of them can make a small deal. And just like that, a brand new problem is already beginning. The moment Saya asks her question, Gremory looks up, and that's when Saya reveals that she has a deal to offer. If Gremory agrees, Saya promises to provide all the support she could possibly need in this world and also do whatever she can regarding her current condition. Hearing that, Gremory is completely stunned. In fact, she immediately grabs Saya and desperately tries to confirm whether she is serious. Could she really return to the demon world? Could there actually be a chance to go back home? Saya calmly nods and confirms that possibility, although she makes it clear that she cannot offer a 100% guarantee. She then explains that she has spent a great deal of time studying reincarnation techniques, the kind that deal with souls from previous worlds. Because of that knowledge, her chances of helping Gremory are much higher than anyone else's in this world. And on top of that, she still possesses her own magical power. Naturally, Gremory immediately becomes suspicious and asks what kind of price could possibly be attached to such an offer. Because let's be honest, offers like these never come for free. And somehow she already knows the price is probably going to be terrible. That's when Saya closes her eyes, raises 3 fingers, and reveals that she has 3 demands. Her first demand immediately catches Gremory off guard. She wants Kenji to like only her, and she specifically forbids the use of charm magic or any kind of magical manipulation. Everything has to happen naturally. Hearing that, Gremory quickly points out the obvious issue. No matter what happened in a previous life, Kenji and Saya are siblings in this one. That fact alone should make the entire thing impossible, right? Well, apparently Saya has already thought about that, because she casually points out that their parents are rarely home, and if things ever become necessary, even the family registry could technically be changed. At that point, Gremory can only stare at her in silence. Yeah, that's definitely not a normal response. Deep down, she realizes something important. This girl is far more dangerous than she first appeared. Even so, Gremory points out that Kenji only sees Saya as his little sister and nothing more. Surprisingly, that answer seems to make Saya genuinely happy. She admits that hearing that makes her feel relieved before smoothly moving on to her second demand. Leaning closer, she asks Gremory to listen until the very end, because this next condition is actually something that will benefit Gremory as well. Even while listening, however, Gremory can only think one thing. No matter how reasonable Saya sounds, a demon is still a demon. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the next morning, where Kenji wakes up after getting very little sleep. As he rubs his eyes, he honestly believes he had already solved most of his problems. Unfortunately, reality has other plans. Now he has to figure out what exactly he is supposed to do about Gremory. Seriously, wasn't one crisis enough already? After gathering himself, he walks to her room, knocks on the door, and announces that he is coming in. However, the moment he enters, he completely freezes. Sitting together are Saya and Gremory, casually chatting side by side. Saya immediately greets him with a cheerful good morning, and surprisingly, Gremory does the same. Kenji stares at them in total disbelief. Wait a second. Are these two actually getting along now? Of all developments. Curious and slightly concerned, he asks whether Gremory is all right, and Saya casually explains that they spent most of the night talking. Then, without any warning whatsoever, Gremory reveals that she has decided to renew the contract. Hearing that, Kenji is completely stunned. Gremory explains that she has been feeling uneasy because she has not been able to properly use her magical powers, while Saya immediately begins explaining the contract terms. According to her, the agreement requires Gremory to protect Kenji from everyone connected to him and from threats related to the other world. To Kenji, the explanation sounds incredibly vague, and honestly, he has no idea how to even respond to it. Sensing his confusion, Saya explains that this is actually a common method used by those who wish to remain in this world for a long time because it allows them to control the timing required to achieve their goals. Gremory then adds that she can simply adjust the condition, so the contract remains active until the end of Kenji's lifespan, although she admits that her original plan was to make it last until she returned to the demon world. Naturally, Kenji wants to know the price. Since his soul is already collateral anyway, he jokingly suggests that maybe Gremory should just take his computer instead. Unfortunately, Gremory reacts as if she has just heard the greatest insult in history. Here she is, a duchess of the demon world personally protecting him, and the best payment he can offer is a computer. Kenji desperately defends himself by insisting that the computer is genuinely valuable because it contains all of his carefully collected images. Somehow that explanation only makes things worse. Thankfully, Saya quickly steps in and cuts the argument short before it can spiral out of control. She explains that the real payment will simply be support, clothes, food, and a place to live. Kenji immediately wonders what their parents are going to think about all this, but Saya confidently assures him that she will explain everything carefully. After thinking about it for a moment, Kenji decides that if Gremory is willing to accept those terms, then maybe this arrangement can actually work. Gremory reluctantly agrees despite clearly not liking the situation very much, and just like that the contract is finally renewed. Kenji lets out a sigh of relief while Gremory quietly hopes that renewing the contract will restore her magical abilities. Moments later, her wish comes true. Her magical power finally returns. Kenji is genuinely happy to see it happen, while Gremory immediately announces that it is time to get started. In an instant, she changes into a large and stylish outfit and happily comments on how comfortable it feels, especially because none of the clothes are tight. Saya can only stare at her and point the irony of hearing fashion advice from the same person who destroyed her favorite outfit. Still, with the clothing issue solved, Kenji turns his attention toward a much bigger problem: housing. The guest room is completely out of the question, so maybe the attic or the storage room could work instead. To his surprise, however, Gremory immediately declares that she likes his room and plans to take it. Kenji nearly chokes. Is she serious? Where exactly is he supposed to go then? For a brief moment, his imagination starts running in a completely different direction before Gremory instantly shuts that down and clarifies that she simply wants him to give up the room. Nothing more. When Kenji asks where he is supposed to stay, Gremory casually suggests moving him into Saya's room. Unsurprisingly, Saya agrees almost immediately, and even points out that such an arrangement technically falls under the contract's payment terms, meaning everyone should respect her opinion. She then looks directly at Kenji and wonders whether he simply doesn't want to stay with her. Kenji awkwardly explains that the issue is privacy rather than anything else, but Saya casually mentions that she wouldn't mind even if he watched inappropriate videos. Kenji immediately points out that he would definitely mind, leaving Saya completely confused. Eventually she accepts defeat and concludes that there is probably no chance of convincing him. Maybe another room will work instead. Gremory agrees, although not before commenting that Kenji's room feels suspicious. Realizing exactly where that conversation is heading, Kenji immediately shuts it down because some subjects are better left unexplored. The discussion eventually shifts toward cleaning the storage room, but before they can move forward, Saya points out that they still need to buy furniture and other necessities. Besides, it is Sunday anyway. Just as they are about to move on, Gremory suddenly stops them because there is something she wants to know first. She wants to hear about Kenji's exes since the topic is directly related to the contract. Kenji immediately thinks she is overthinking things and jokingly implies that the number might even be in the triple digits. However, Saya instantly corrects him and reveals that there are 7 girls she can confidently say will never give up on him. Then she drops another surprise. Including herself, they had once formed a group known as the Round Table. 8 members in total. They shared information, adjusted values, and even dealt with enemies and spies together. Hearing that, even Kenji is completely shocked. Gremory can only stare in disbelief because somehow this situation keeps getting stranger and stranger. Like seriously, what kind of group even is that? Kenji nervously tries to downplay everything by claiming that his previous self was honestly just a useless magical pie whose only redeeming qualities were his looks and magical power. Gremory then wonders whether he at least has some idea who those 7 girls might be. And Kenji confidently insists that she should not underestimate him because he can at least figure that much out. Meanwhile, the scene shifts once again, this time to a demon arriving while apologizing for being late. Another demon casually points out that being only 30 minutes late is hardly a major issue, while a third remarks that everything seems normal as usual. However, what truly matters is the reason everyone has been summoned today because that is the question sitting at the center of the room. Why exactly were they called here? A demon calmly confirms that she already knows, and then another voice cuts in sharply as she calls Anita by name and tells her to take a seat. And just like that, the atmosphere tightens as 5 demons gather around the table, including Veracruz, the Blazing Radiance, Anita, Vessel of Corruption, Sherastina, the Iron-Blooded Saint, Ereuthia, the Elegant Wind Blossom, and Kalzavina, the Divine Abyss of Hope, all seated like some high-level council meeting where, honestly, even the air feels heavier than it should. And then Kalzavina finally breaks the silence, saying it is time to get straight to the point, because they have successfully identified where Kenji has been reincarnated. And that instantly shifts everything as both Ayesha and Nadia react in shock, Nadia even expressing relief like she has been holding her breath for too long, while Ayesha immediately questions what the basis of the claim even is. Because, like seriously, what proof do they actually have? Kalzavina responds by instructing everyone to first review the footage, and as the screen plays, Kenji is seen standing beside Saya in what looks like the royal capital, a recent appearance that clearly confirms their lead, and Nadia leans in, visibly surprised, while Kalzavina explains that the footage is recent and that the soul's waveform matches his personality profile, which only makes the situation more convincing. Veracruz, however, casually remarks that even after reincarnation he still carries that same foolish expression on his face. And for a split second, it feels like someone just threw sarcasm into a sacred meeting, prompting Savina to immediately shut that down and insist that such disrespect is unnecessary, because this is already serious enough. Ereuthia, on the other hand, softens the moment by saying he actually looks quite cute and even gets reminded of his childhood, which is honestly a strange emotional turn in a room full of strategists, while Sherastina acknowledges that his appearance has changed due to reincarnation, but then immediately shifts tone and asks the real question everyone is avoiding. Why is that treacherous vixen standing beside him? And that question alone changes the temperature of the room again. Anita coldly responds that she can practically see Sherastina's bones from how tense she is, while Ayesha tries to rationalize the situation by suggesting Kenji has always been lenient toward those close to him, and maybe he even forgave her, which leads Ayesha to question whether she is expected to accept something like that at all, while Anita sharply insists that their master simply needs to be brought back. Nothing more. No complications, no emotions. Savina then adds another layer of tension by revealing that the reconnaissance familiar was attacked by an unknown force, and immediately after that the gate was forcibly shut down, which makes Sherastina's expression darken as she concludes that a hostile party definitely interfered, and Savina confirms that this possibility cannot be ignored, prompting Sherastina to clench her fist and declare that when they bring him back she will crush whoever is responsible without hesitation, while Anita immediately objects, insisting she should be the one to retrieve him instead. And just like that, even the rescue mission turns into competition. Veracruz then shifts the focus by asking how much information they actually have about the area, and Kasavina admits the uncomfortable truth that at this point they have almost nothing, only ongoing gate deployment for investigation and a need to wait for results, which clearly frustrates Ayesha, who expected better news and now feels the situation slipping out of control again. Suddenly, Savina reveals something even worse, that the familiar sent for monitoring has been destroyed, and she decides she will personally investigate, which immediately prompts Sherastina to volunteer to accompany her, insisting she cannot leave her alone, almost like a protective reflex, while Ereuthia sighs and decides she must also go because, as she puts it, trouble always follows when no one supervises them. And honestly, she might not be wrong there. As the group begins preparing to move out, Veracruz suddenly turns to Xavina and questions whether everything is truly going according to plan. And Xavina responds cautiously, asking what she means. But Veracruz simply smiles and suggests that if Xavina does not want to answer, that is fine, because they are more similar than she thinks, and she understands what Xavina truly wants. Although she warns that if things go too far she will not ignore it, which makes Xavina narrow her eyes and firmly reject the comparison, stating that Veracruz is wrong to assume they are alike because her desires are far more shallow and petty than what Veracruz imagines. And right there, in that final line, it becomes clear. This is not just a mission anymore. It is a silent clash of intentions waiting to explode. Ereuthia quickly travels through a portal, and right behind her, Sherastina watches in confusion, wondering where she is rushing off to with such urgency. But then again, before she can think any further, Ereuthia notices her following and acknowledges that Sherastina is clearly worried, though she feels she could stand to calm down a little. Unfortunately, Sherastina is in no mood to relax. She cannot understand how anyone could stay calm right now, especially when the thought of something happening to Semania-sama is enough to make her feel like she would never be able to face that person again. Ereuthia, however, sees this as Sherastina's single-minded side and surprisingly admits that she does not dislike it. Meanwhile, she casually points out that regardless of how they travel, Xavina somehow always arrives first thanks to her teleportation abilities. Honestly, at this point, is teleportation even fair? The moment Sherastina notices Xavina already standing there, she immediately wonders why Ereuthia did not mention it sooner. Ereuthia simply laughs and remarks that Sherastina's intense expression was terrifying enough already, and to make matters worse, her nose is even bleeding. Realizing this, Sherastina quickly heals herself and admits that she may have rushed a little too much. Ereuthia then pulls out a handkerchief and starts wiping her nose, reasoning that as a princess, Sherastina naturally has too many things to worry about. Then, completely out of nowhere, she starts wondering if all of Sherastina's nutrition is somehow being absorbed by those. Sherastina freezes in confusion and questions what exactly Ereuthia thinks she is doing. Ereuthia casually explains that she is simply amazed by how outrageously large they still are. Sherastina immediately counters that the truly outrageous thing here is Ereuthia's outfit, and insists that she stop because it is disrupting the order of the castle itself. Ereuthia argues that she is already holding herself back as much as possible, while Sherastina remains convinced that it is still far too indecent. And somehow, in the middle of a serious crisis, these two still find time for this argument. Like seriously, how is this the topic right now? Eventually, as Sherastina continues looking annoyed, Ereuthia shifts her attention to Xavina and wonders if she has figured anything out. At the same time, Sherastina picks up her destroyed familiar and reviews the visual and auditory data it recorded up until now. But despite examining everything carefully, she finds nothing particularly useful. Naturally, her next concern is Semania's whereabouts. Xavina concludes that Semania appears to have moved to another location, and reveals that Anita is currently tracking her. The scene then shifts to Anita, who quietly notices that Semania is not even trying to hide her tracks. In fact, her destination is so obvious that there is barely any mystery left. Of course, whenever someone says that, things usually get worse. Soon, Anita arrives near a tower, and suddenly a massive bolt of lightning crashes down from it. Then, without warning, a gigantic monster bursts out of the ground. Yeah, that's definitely not normal. Ereuthia immediately launches an attack, and the sight is shocking enough to leave even Xavina stunned. Both Ereuthia and Sherastina stare in disbelief as Xavina finally reveals what happened. According to her, the guardian golem of the 7th research tower has already been destroyed by Semania. Ereuthia is left stunned as she realizes what Xavina is implying. If that is true, then this must be the very place where the gate connected to another world is located. Xavina confirms exactly that, and naturally the next question arises. Why would Semania come here? What could she possibly be planning? Ereuthia decides they can investigate that later and immediately asks to be teleported directly to the gate. However, Xavina explains that such a thing is impossible. The gate's influence makes the surrounding area extremely dangerous whenever space-time magic is used nearby. Hearing that, Sherastina quickly demands that they at least be teleported somewhere safe and close to the location. Without wasting another second, she snaps her fingers, and the 3 demons instantly teleport away. Meanwhile, inside the tower, a demon rushes up a staircase at full speed. Suddenly, a door bursts open and a gigantic one-eyed monster emerges from the other side. The demon reacts immediately, rotating her wrist and casting a spell. In an instant, the monster explodes into pieces. Even she looks surprised by how easily it goes down. Just then, Anita arrives and notes that it has been quite a while. The demon responds by wondering if Anita intends to stand in Nia's way. Anita calmly explains that the answer depends entirely on Nia. If she answers a question honestly, there will be no interference because Anita considers herself a pacifist. Then Anita approaches Nia directly and asks who told her about the gate. At first, Nia remains silent. Then she reveals that her master told her. Not only that, but her master also said that if she entered the vortex they would meet again. Hearing this, Anita immediately begins analyzing the situation. Could this be a realistic illusion? Mind control perhaps? Whatever it is, it allows her to rule out Veracruz and Cheristina as suspects. Nia then asks if she is free to go. Anita keeps her word and allows it, even asking Nia to pass along a greeting to her master. Nia glances back one last time before moving toward the vortex and disappearing inside it. Watching her vanish, Anita quietly decides to help a little, so Nia does not get dragged back. And with that, Anita enters the vortex as well. The moment Anita disappears, the research tower begins collapsing. Then a voice echoes nearby, lamenting that it could not arrive in time. Soon afterward, Anita reunites with Cheristina and Ereuthia. Ereuthia immediately points out that Anita certainly took her time getting there. Anita casually reminds her that the others arrived through Xavina's teleportation, so of course she would be slower. Cheristina then anxiously wonders if Semania is already inside. Considering everything that has happened, Anita believes that she probably is. Cheristina cannot understand why Anita does not seem more worried. Anita admits that she is concerned, but panicking will solve absolutely nothing. Ereuthia then remarks that it would actually be better if Semania simply passed through the gate. After all, she has remained inside ever since the tower started collapsing. Quietly standing nearby, Xavina watches the conversation unfold while Ereuthia expresses hope that Semania safely reaches her master. The scene then shifts back to the human world where Kenji is shopping alongside Gremory and Saya. Completely exhausted, Kenji wonders where they still need to go because he is already tired. Saya points out that they have at least finished buying the essential furniture, leaving only clothes and a few other necessities. Kenji looks around in surprise, but Gremory merely mocks him, thinking that weak boys really are troublesome. Annoyed, Kenji questions why she does not carry the bags herself. Gremory immediately reminds him that she is a bodyguard and therefore needs to keep her hands free. Saya apologetically offers to carry half of Kenji's belongings, but Kenji insists that it is unnecessary. Meanwhile, Gremory secretly feels rather pleased. It had been surprisingly easy. She proves a point, and Saya instantly comes to help. From Saya's perspective, Gremory is doing an excellent job, and she hopes that continuing like this will only make Kenji care about her more. As the group continues walking, a loud growl suddenly comes from Kenji's stomach. He realizes he never ate breakfast and suggests heading back to grab something to eat. Gremory comments that humans are unbelievably inconvenient creatures. Ironically, at that exact moment, Anita's stomach twists with hunger as well. She looks genuinely confused. What exactly is that supposed to mean? Kenji points out that whatever just happened makes her pretty similar to humans too. Gremory is caught completely off guard by that observation. Trying to move things along, Saya suggests finding something nearby to eat. Kenji immediately recommends noodles and explains that it is a popular Japanese dish, adding that there are several great shops in the area. A short while later, everyone arrives at a ramen shop. A massive bowl of ramen is placed in front of Gremory. The moment she tastes it, her eyes widen in shock. It is unbelievably delicious. Saya happily notes that she is glad Gremory likes it. Before anyone knows it, Gremory has already finished every last drop of soup. She admits that she used to make fun of human food, but now she completely takes those words back because she absolutely loves it. Kenji notices just how much she is enjoying herself. Gremory then reflects on how unlucky she has been ever since being summoned here, yet she feels she could eat food like this every single day. Maybe this place is not so bad after all. Saya jokingly warns her that she is going to gain weight if she keeps eating like that. Kenji adds that if that logic makes sense, then she really is becoming more like a human. Gremory immediately panics at the thought of her figure being ruined. But then again, the ramen is just too delicious. Truly a difficult battle. The greatest threat she has faced so far might not be an enemy at all. It might be noodles. Saya laughs and remarks that Gremory is surprisingly carefree. If she wants to worry about something, she should worry about protecting Kenji instead. Gremory confidently assures her that everything will be fine because they possess complete information about their target. According to her, if that information is accurate, then she and Saya can handle everything themselves. Veracruz and Khazagana cannot come, while Anita, Semania, and Ereuthia are significantly weaker without support. As for Cheristina and Nia, Gremory believes they can defeat them easily. Even so, Kenji still doubts that anyone will actually come after them. Saya hopes he is right, yet she cannot shake a bad feeling in her chest. And honestly, when characters start saying they have a bad feeling, things rarely stay peaceful for long. Far away, the scene shifts once again. Nea finally arrives in a mountainous region and looks around in confusion. Where exactly has she ended up? She soon realizes she is standing in the middle of a forest. Then a familiar scent reaches her nose. Instantly, her expression changes. The smell is wonderful. More importantly, she recognizes it immediately. It is her master's scent.
Here I am,